When the HOA declared war on my quiet fishing routine, I expected letters and petty harassment, not environmental sabotage. But when they poisoned my lake to stop me, they didn't realize they'd poisoned their own water supply too. What followed wasn't just revenge, it was a courtroom battle that exposed everything. The lake had always been mine, both legally and spiritually. My grandfather had bought this land when I was a child, and it was here he taught me how to fish, how to sit still and listen to the water. After he passed, I swore to preserve the lake, not just as property, but as a legacy. That peace ended when the nearby development sprouted up and formed its own homeowners association. At first, I ignored their flyers and polite invitations to join. My land wasn't theirs, and I wasn't interested in their rules. But the HOA wasn't used to hearing no. Soon their president, Linda, began appearing uninvited at my dock, demanding I stop fishing because, in her words, it's unsightly and lowers property values. I laughed at her audacity. "This is my land," I said, "my lake. Your rules don't apply here." But Linda didn't take rejection well. Her board escalated, letters threatening fines, drones hovering above me while I fished, even no trespassing signs nailed into my trees. I tore them down, thinking they'd eventually tire of their little crusade. I was wrong. One morning, I walked to the lake and froze. The water wasn't clear anymore. It shimmered with an oily film. Dozens of fish floated belly up, their bodies stiff and lifeless. The stench hit me, sharp and chemical. My heart sank as I pulled out a dead bass, one I'd recognized from its scarred fin. Rage boiled inside me, but my instincts told me to stay calm. Instead of storming the HOA office, I pulled on gloves, filled a jar with the foul water, and bagged 3 of the fish in ice. I knew what this meant. Someone had poisoned the lake. I didn't have proof yet, but deep down, I knew who was behind it. The same people who thought they could regulate my life had now destroyed something irreplaceable. What they didn't realize, though, was that their neighborhood's water system was directly tied to my lake. They hadn't just attacked me, they had poisoned themselves. Within days, rumors spread across town. Children in the HOA community were getting sick. Dogs collapsed after drinking from garden hoses. Residents rushed to buy bottled water, panic etched into their faces. Linda, desperate to control the narrative, called a community meeting, where she blamed natural algae blooms. That's when I stepped in. I stood in the back of the hall, arms crossed, and when she paused for breath, I said loudly, "Algae didn't kill my fish. Someone poisoned the lake, and you all have been drinking it." The room went dead silent. Dozens of eyes turned toward me, suspicion turning quickly into anger, not at me, but at Linda. She stammered something about unfounded accusations, but I had already reported everything. The very next morning, state environmental investigators arrived at my property to take water samples. The evidence piled up quickly. Lab results showed high concentrations of industrial pesticides, chemicals not found naturally in any lake. The investigators traced invoices back to a local supplier, and stamped at the bottom of the purchase order, Linda's name. The HOA scrambled. Their lawyer sent me cease and desist letters, accusing me of defamation. But I wasn't afraid. I had the state on my side, and soon, residents of the development began filing lawsuits of their own. Parents with sick children, homeowners whose lawns had turned brown because of contaminated irrigation. Every plaintiff pointed back to the HOA board. The state attorney general's office launched a formal investigation, citing violations of environmental law, reckless endangerment, and property damage. When subpoenaed, the HOA's treasurer confessed in sworn testimony, yes, the board had voted in secret to dump chemicals into the lake, hoping to drive me out and stop the fishing eyesore. That admission cracked the case wide open. Suddenly, it wasn't just civil lawsuits, it was criminal. The HOA wasn't dealing with fines anymore. They were facing felony charges. The courtroom was packed the day the trial began. Reporters filled the benches, neighbors whispered behind cupped hands, and Linda sat at the defense table, stone-faced but visibly rattled. I sat quietly with my attorney, watching as the state laid out the case, environmental records, the lab results, and the treasurer's damning testimony. When I was called to the stand, I described the day I found the fish floating, how I collected samples, how the lake had been part of my family for generations. I spoke not with anger, but with grief. The jury listened, eyes wide, as I held up a photo of the dead bass I'd once caught and released. The defense tried to argue it was miscommunication, that the HOA board didn't realize the chemicals would seep into the water supply. But the prosecutors shredded that excuse. You don't accidentally order and dump industrial pesticides into a community's lake, one attorney thundered. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts: environmental violations, reckless endangerment, and conspiracy. The HOA as an organization was dissolved, its funds seized to pay damages. Linda and several board members were sentenced to prison time, while others faced crippling fines. But justice didn't stop there. Residents sued individually, winning millions in settlements. Families who had once mocked me for being a loner with a fishing pole now thanked me for standing my ground. Many lost faith in HOAs altogether, their pristine neighborhood forever stained by scandal. As for me, I didn't care about their gratitude. What mattered was the lake. Though it would take years to heal fully, restoration efforts had already begun, funded ironically by the very fines extracted from the HOA. Environmental groups joined in, helping restock the water with fish and planting along the banks to purify the runoff. One evening, months after the verdict, I sat once again at the dock. The water was still, clearer than I'd seen it in months. Frogs croaked, dragonflies buzzed, and a ripple broke the surface where a young fish leapt. I smiled, knowing the lake was fighting back, just as I had. The HOA thought they could bully me, thought they could poison my peace. But in the end, their greed poisoned themselves. And as the gavel came down in court, it wasn't just my victory, it was the lake's. And that's how the HOA's greed backfired in the most unexpected way. They tried to poison a man's peace, but ended up poisoning themselves instead. Justice was served, and the lake lives on. Thanks for watching Hidden Compass Stories, where truth, drama, and karma always find their way. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unbelievable stories.